You're listening to The Observing Eye. Pirate radio for the mind. Coming at you fresh from the computer hell cabin.
Hello, you beautiful lot. It's Friday, the 25th of August, 2023, and this is episode 27 of The Observing Eye. If you're new, welcome aboard. If you're returning, welcome back. So, as always, I like to begin these episodes with a brief moment of reflection. So let's take a few seconds just to consider the good things that have happened this week. And now a moment for the not so good. As promised, we are back onto our weekly schedule after a bit of interruptions during the summer due to time off and the usual things. So thank you again for joining me. This episode, I wanted to go back and revisit something we talked about a while ago, probably earlier this year, and that's the subject of consistency, because I think consistency is important. And I think it's worth going through again, but in a slightly different way. It was a little bit high level, this is how you do it kind of thing in the previous one. So let's dive into it in a little bit more depth. And let's talk about it from my favorites, the philosophical and psychological angles of consistency and the benefits that that brings. It should really come as no surprise to any of us that consistency forms an integral part of most philosophies and most psychology, along with, some stuff around relationships and trust as well. That helps. But we'll start with the philosophy. I'm going to throw a few different flavors into the mix, give you some ideas and some pointers for things that you can go and have a look at yourself if you are really engaged in some of this stuff. So let's start with the one that all of us know, I imagine, if we're listening to this, the great curtain-wearing Aristotle. Doth mother know you weareth her drapes? So Aristotle was born in around 400 BC, and he was a student of another equally impressive philosopher, which was Plato, and I'm sure you've all heard of him as well. Not only was he a student of Plato, Aristotle was also a tutor of Alexander the Great. So some fairly grand cojones this man has in the philosophical sense. Some powerful credentials here for old Aristotle. But Aristotle was really relevant in his creation of his ideas around logic and virtue. He wrote this... or I should say he explored this concept. He didn't write the concept. He explored this concept of what's called eudaimonia, which is translated as happiness or flourishing. And as part of this eudaimonia, he emphasized the importance of cultivating virtues in order to achieve this state. Which, again, I'm sure we can see some parallels there around, virtues within philosophy. Virtue is a very important part of Stoicism, which is another kind of ancient Roman Greek strand of philosophy. You'll see virtues appear in a lot of religions as well. I think pretty much all mainstream religions have some aspect of the cultivation of virtue in them. I can only speak in my own experience from Christianity and Buddhism, but I know both of those are all around virtue, or is a central tenet of those practices in those religions are around the cultivation of virtue. So consistency forms a part of cultivating virtue, according to Aristotle and a lot of other philosophers, which we will come to shortly. Aristotle said that achieving a virtuous character requires consistent effort to act in accordance with reason and moral principles. So he was all about ethics as well. In Stoicism, I feel it's a nice little bridging moment to go from Aristotle to Stoicism. So Stoic philosophy, much in the same way as Aristotle, it emphasizes the importance of living in accordance with nature and reason. That's two very important things I feel we may have lost sight of in the past 50 years, living in accordance to nature and reason. Maybe the last 10, who knows? Stoicism talks about the consistent adherence to rational principles, like maintaining emotional equanimity in the face of life's vicissitudes. I love that word, vicissitude. It sounds like snake jazz. Now, there's a lot of literature by the Stoics on the subject of consistency. I'm going to give you a little quote by one of my favorites, which is a guy. I say a guy casually, like it's just some dude I drink with down the pub. This guy called Epictetus. If you're interested in some of this Stoic stuff, go and read Epictetus's Discourses and the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. There's some really cracking books on Stoicism. But I'm going to read this quote from Epictetus around consistency and habits. And I'm going to do it in my best Gandalf voice just to really give it some gravitas for that. So hold on to your pants, everybody. Every habit and capability is confirmed and grows in its corresponding actions, walking by walking and running by running. Therefore, if you want to do something, make a habit of it. If you don't want to do that, then don't. But make a habit of something else instead. The same principle is at work in our state of mind. When you get angry, you've not only experienced that evil, but you've also reinforced a bad habit, adding fuel to the fire, Frodo Baggins. Now, if we skip forward to the 18th century, so that's a fairly big jump, historically speaking, of like 2,000 years or so. But moving forwards to the 18th century, we're going to talk about Immanuel Kant, the father of modern ethics. Now, his moral philosophy includes the idea that one's actions should be guided by principles that could be universally applied. And again, moral principle, demanding a consistency in applying moral principles, coming back to virtues, applying virtue, moral principles, all that kind of stuff. So Kant with a K, he was Danish, if I remember rightly. It appears in the first of his categorical imperatives where he talks about the consistency principle, or, treat others the way you want to be treated principle, which is always a good one, which kind of comes under like dignity, treat others with respect and as holding value in themselves. So that's his idea around, we must consistently treat people in that way, to be consistent. And that comes back to our whole, virtues and morality, doesn't it? We want to consistently work on the virtues that enable us to hold people in what is essentially unconditional positive regard, and to treat other people with respect and dignity, irrespective of our potential prejudgments and all the other shit that goes on for us internally. So I guess to summarize over some of those philosophical ideas, when we talk about consistency, the fundamental principle is just consistently don't be a dick. I think that sort of, covers morality, doesn't it? Covers ethics. Just don't be a dick. Don't be a dick to others. Don't be a dick to yourself. I think we'll all be better off for it. And when we talk about things like virtue, we want to be consistently working on ourselves. I mean, we could go, I love this idea. Nietzsche gets a bit of a bad rap, right? And I'm going to dive into Nietzsche here just with abandon. And I'm sure I'm going to get some shit for it. But Nietzsche, the idea around the Übermensch, right? The supermind. He talks about how the human being is like a sculpture that's never entirely finished. And we should be constantly working on ourselves, constantly improving that, as though the human being, the mind, was like a work of art and just needs to be consistently improved. So constantly working on it to make it better, to, as iterations of self-reflection and change. And, my favorite mantra, do the work, or my favorite mantra, which is R-rated, which is do the fucking work. That's when shit hits the fan. We bring that one out when I'm feeling particularly morose, and the melancholia seeps into my pores like a fish of sadness. So there's a lot to be said for consistency in the application and in and improvement and development of self-discipline. So I kind of feel like consistency serves as a bridge, right, between self-discipline, between habit, between motivation. So self-discipline, which we work on through consistency, allows us to maintain consistency, which in turn facilitates habit formation. The habits then reduce our reliance on sheer willpower and gusto to make us do things, which makes the behavior more sustainable. And meanwhile, our motivation fuels and is fueled by consistency, which creates this wonderful, like Teletubby-esque, glowingly colourful feedback loop. You know, just imagine basking in the glory of that weird sun on the green hills whilst the Teletubbies dance around you. Did they get cancelled, the Teletubbies? I have a feeling like they got cancelled and I probably shouldn't talk about them, but they're here now. I've done it. It's been recorded. So I'll just kind of start to wrap this up. But I want to talk a little bit just towards the end around consistency and motivation. Those last 2 points that I raised before I went off on like some tangent about Teletubbies. So consistency, how does consistency build motivation then? How does it? What works for you? Let's take a moment. I'm going to ask you a question. And not that I can hear your answers, but just answer for yourself quietly in your mind and see what crops up. So the question then, what helps you to build motivation to do something that may be potentially challenging, that puts you out of your comfort zone? What gets you to that space? Take a moment just to answer that quietly in your mind. So consistency and motivation. You've got the answer. You've got the answer to what works for you. And I'm going to give you some thoughts from my perspective, and we'll see if we can meet in the middle. Or I might just completely break any empathic bridge that I've created with you as a listener, and you just think I'm talking absolute shit, which may well have happened many, many minutes before I even started getting to this point. So let's go. Momentum. So when we are developing new habits or we are changing behaviors, changing perspectives, trying to bring in new things to our lives that will aid in discipline and self-improvement, if we start with small actions, tiny baby steps, small actions that are consistent, that we consistently accomplish, which gives us a sense of achievement, which motivates us to continue on the journey, and it leads us to greater capacity for effort over time. So consistency in building momentum, but that requires starting small. Don't try and do all the things at once. We all know that doing all the things at once doesn't work. I'm going to quit drinking, smoking, start dieting and exercise as of Monday. By Tuesday, you're smoking a baguette, sitting under a bridge and injecting yourself with like soft cheese. It's not going to work. We know that doesn't work. All of us deep down know that that is not the path to success. So small actions, achievable actions that will grow over time because your sense of accomplishment and your momentum will grow over time with those achievements. So the next thing I want to talk about around consistency and motivation is aligning your motivation with your interests, aligning your consistency with your interests. So you might be really interested in like art, yeah, or writing or cooking or something, I don't know, like running. You might really love running. Who loves running? Yeah, you might. It's cool. I got no judgment with that. It's okay. I really love like cake. It's fine. You know, if you've got something that you enjoy, and we all have these things that we probably did when we were a kid and we've sort of let them go because, you know, adulthood. But think about some of those stuff, because like there's a lot of improvement that can be, there's a lot of self-discovery and a lot of ways that we can improve by engaging in some of those activities. And if we consistently practice some of those things that we are inherently interested in, then it becomes a lot easier to be motivated. the initial hurdle is going to be there, right? It's always there, like getting into the habit, getting into the routine and being consistent. Yeah, that's tough. But once you break through that, that's where willpower and discipline are required. But break through that, and then we can engage more in doing things that are aligned with our values. And I'm sure there's something there to be said abound around alignment with virtues as well. But I'm going to park that, and you can have a think, and maybe you can get back to me in the comments. And lastly, let's talk about how consistency can be useful when we all get the inevitable motivational slump. The terrible slump. I'm sitting in a trough, and I just can't get myself out of it. As we talked about earlier, there's that kind of positive feedback loop between, consistency acting as a bridge between habit formation, self-discipline, motivation. Yeah, so think about that for a second. So when we are in that slump, it's the role of consistency that can help to kind of just push us to do the things that we need to do, whatever those things are, whatever's on our list of, self-improvements or, just shit we want to get done. So there's that, that consistency in self-development, which again, driven by discipline. But the more that we do these things, the more that we get involved in these activities, the more that we kind of foster self-discipline, and the greater the sense of accomplishments become, and, the greater the motivation, the less those slumps, the less of those slumpy slumps that we will feel, because we'll have the motivation. We fall into these troughs of like shit thinking because things feel insurmountable, because, maybe we've taken on too much, or we don't feel like we've achieved anything, or, we have this terrible lack of self-worth and feel like we're a failure as a human being. So it's all of this sort of shit that we can work through by kind of, I'm not saying the word, and I have to very specifically state, I am not saying the word just bottle it up, because that's not at all a positive thing. But I think we have to recognize that when we are feeling that way, and, the motivation's down, we're in a bit of a low, to push through and take some action. Because in taking some action, in my experience, I'm not speaking for everybody, I can only speak for myself. In my experience, that has pretty much always worked in getting me out of a bit of a slump. Getting on with shit. Because the sense of because it's the weight of the burden of doing that's making me feel shit. So if I just get it done, instead of sitting in this kind of procrastination tornado where just everything feels too much, just to take some action, to be consistent, to engage a bit of self-discipline, then there is an injection of energy and effort required to get me to do that thing. But once I've done it, the slump's pretty much gone, if not evaporated entirely, because I've removed the thing that was creating it in the first place. So it's challenging, and, we all procrastinate when there are challenging emotions around. That's what procrastination is. But yeah, push through. Use consistency and discipline as a means to elevate yourself from that particular trough. And again, just to be very clear, before I get chastised for glibness, I'm not talking about, elevating yourself out of depression. I'm talking about just a bit of a slump. Okay, so, two distinctly different things here. We all feel, and I think it's important to differentiate between depression and that overwhelmingness and just feeling a bit fucking shit about things for an hour or two. Like that, we also get that. So there is a distinct difference between those two states of being. Anyway, that's enough for me today. We've gone from Epictetus to Kant to Nietzsche to the Teletubbies. And what a ride it was. What a fucking ride. So as always, I want to thank my wonderful 4 listeners for tuning in. I love all of you very much. I will, Christmas cards will be going out in the post. And I hope, as always, it's useful. There's some sort of little, garnet of wisdom that comes out of these that you can take away. As it's Friday, I always like to wish you a wonderful weekend. Normally there's some kind of little joke about doing something over the weekend that reflects on the theme of what we've talked about. So, go out this weekend and consistently don't be a dick to your peers. That's your challenge this weekend. Just think about stuff. Think about what you're doing, what you want to do. Think about how you can engage some consistency and build some habits and create momentum. Create momentum to enact change. There you are. That's your task, if you choose to accept it this weekend. As always, wishing you a lovely one. Hope it's peaceful. Hope you just, can enjoy it, get some time out, take some rest, have a think, be creative, watch a good movie. I don't know, whatever it is you like to do at the weekend. Go and enjoy it. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.
You've been listening to The Observing Eye. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope that you found it useful. And if you're interested in any more of my writings or work around psychology and philosophy and general day-to-day living, please go and take a look at my Substack, which is theobservingeye.substack.com, and that's I as in the letter, not I as in the gelatinous organ through which you see. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll see you soon.